Okay, ready, I guess it's live.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tammy Sadeghi, and on behalf of the International Women's Day Committee in Vancouver and East of Canada, Ontario, I would like to welcome you all to today's forum. We have a few amazing speakers, and after our speakers, we're going to have open mic. You can ask questions, and our panelists they can answer your questions. I would like to welcome our first speaker, Alicia Barsallo. Alicia, she's a well-known activist, and she's going to talk about cultural relativism and postmodernism. I don't have Alicia's introduction in front of me. Please, Alicia, if you can help me, you're welcome and start your panel. Thank you.
No problem, Tammy. The main reason that, well, that I'm the, I guess, the main speaker is because I happened to write an essay about the need to revive feminist collective struggle. The essay also explores the use of some of the best known postmodernist postulates in ways that further the agenda of those who are against women's rights in particular. And that's the reason I'm speaking here. I've been very happy to find that the Vancouver International Women's Day Committee has resonate, that the essay resonates with the group. And it's no surprise because the Vancouver International Women's Day Committee is composed of women and men, courageous women and men, well, mostly composed by Iranian fighters in exile. They have the hard task of fighting to free the people in Iran from an unbelievable yoke. And it's a fight that we want masses of people to rise to join. I mean, I think that in order to end the atrocities suffered by our sisters in other countries, we need masses of people here in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, in those countries where we are still fighting for women's rights. We still want to further women's rights, but we're doing so at a much higher level. The things that women, like the women in Iran, have to fight against are crimes mandated by the state, forced on the people through militias, and a total lack of rights for people who protest and disagree with that sort of thing. So in North America, in Canada, what we need, in my view, is a revival of feminist collective action. We have been now for more than a couple of decades living a low in collective action. We don't see thousands of women take to the streets. We don't see that anymore. We see a lot of effort, many excellent women activists fighting to protect victims of violence, fighting to help women in distress for one thing or another, against poverty, things like that. Some very good work is being done by many women activists right now in Canada. What is not happening is that concerted effort of masses of women to join together and deal with the next step. We have, in North America, we have had the problem of the law in collective action, so much so that in the United States, under Trump, when Trump filled the Supreme Court with anti-abortion, very right-wing judges, the possibility, perhaps the probability of having abortion made illegal in a number of states in the United States is a very real one. And that, like 20 years ago, would have been unheard of, that something like the right to control, the right of every woman to control her body would be put into question at this point in North America. But this is what's happening. So in order to revive feminist collective action, I believe that we not only do we have to organize again, although that is a task, but what we have to do is to deal with the ideas, with the deceit, with the falsehoods that have been used in the last decades to discredit feminist collective action. It started by saying that the feminist action of the 1960s was not representative. There was big criticism there, that they were white, middle class women rallying and fighting for rights that only benefited them, or that they were trying to impose on women in other countries their views. So their fight began to be called not representative. But it went from there, these anti-feminists went from calling feminist collective action not representative to saying it can't be representative. It's not possible that it can be representative. And they were able to do that by misusing some of the postmodernist claims. Like postmodernism, well, one of the key points of postmodernism is, let's look at the individual. Okay, so we have in modernist times, we have looked at societies, we have analyzed them, we have understood them by looking at the social classes that were there, by looking at the strata, the relationship between large groups, et cetera, et cetera. So the postmodernists come to the fore and say, but wait a minute, you've been very busy looking at social class, but you have forgotten to look at the individual. Now that in itself is not wrong. What's wrong with looking at the individual? Feminists were looking at the individual way before anybody called himself postmodernist. Feminism said all the time, said don't stereotype, don't condition, don't tell girls that it's okay for them to cry and boys that it's not okay for them to cry. Don't ascribe personality traits to children based on their gender. It was feminists who said, patriarchy forces us to live lives that we may not choose to live if we had the freedom, if society were not pushing us in that direction. It was the feminists of the 60s that questioned all of those institutions, ideas, religions, creeds that had mentally and emotionally enslaved us. It wasn't just conquests of, things like the vote or women's studies or access to male-dominated professions and trades. and things like that. There were many gains made in that sense, gains that we enjoy up to now in North America, right? But they also said, in order to be ourselves, in order to genuinely be able to develop as human beings, we have to get rid of all of these preconceived notions on the basis of gender. So there's nothing wrong with looking at the individual. See, but those with a conservative agenda, those religious fundamentalists who are opposed to feminism, they then said, well, if the individual is so important, if each one of us is different, well, then how can a movement, how can a large group, an organization, represent all of them, all the individuals? So they began to question that, and that's what should be beaten. That's what should be destroyed. That whole thing. Yes, we are all, well, we want to be. We're all individuals and we're different. We wish we were even more different, but we are different, okay. But that doesn't mean we can't find common interests. That's what human rights means. We're very different individuals throughout the world, but you know what? We are all opposed to torture. And that's a human right, and it's universal. So how come when it comes to women, okay, it's anathema, it's ridiculous to be able to think that forced marriage is okay in Bangladesh, and it's okay in Bangladesh, but it's not okay in Canada. How come that all of a sudden we have to allow some things in some countries and not in others? So now, how do we get to the question of cultural relativism? Okay, cultural relativism is also something that they drew out of that whole mess that they created by misusing postmodernism. So each individual has her or his own truth. Okay, from there they go, well, then each individual group of similar individuals has its own truth. And from there they went to each individual culture has its own truth. And so what they managed to do was turn something good, which is the fight against ethnic prejudice, racial prejudice, intolerance to other cultures' ways, like language or music or dance, right? Which is, one has to fight against that. There's no reason why we can't allow others to go ahead and dance and sing and celebrate poetry and so on from their own country and to study their language, etc., etc. But that good thing was then used to create the bad. Because then they said, but wait a minute, if each culture has its own truth, well, then respect it, don't touch it. If wives are beaten there, that's okay. If child marriage is okay there, then that's fine. You gotta allow that. You have to turn a blind eye. Believe it or not, this aberrant, irrational way of seeing things took hold of government institutions, academic journals, courts of law in North America and in Europe. Tons of papers have been written on this in academic journals. I mean, it's hard to believe. Books have been published about this whole scenario. Why? Because there's a lot of money and a lot of power of those making it so that it is the way it is. And that's what we're facing. That my I guess my contention is that in creating a strong reaction throughout Europe, North America, and the rest of the world, but in creating a strong reaction in the first world against the atrocities being suffered in countries like Iran, we have to question, we have to argue down, we have to dispel these ideas of cultural relativism. We have to be able to get people back to being rational and rid them of the fear of criticizing what's wrong in any culture. What's wrong is what hurts people, what takes the freedom away from them. What's wrong is that, at a minimum, that which breaks the law. So something that breaks the law in Canada, no matter who breaks that law, should be treated exactly the same. That not because they belong to this culture, that culture, they're going to be given leniency, which is what's happening right now. And we have to refuse, we have to answer back when somebody says, well, you know, you shouldn't be saying that because you're not respecting this culture, that culture. We gotta beat that. And that's part of the struggle, that's part of the fight. I'm gonna end it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Actually, you know, like even in Canada, I can feel that very well because even lots of times we are going to criticize Islam and how Islamic rule affects women's life. Sadly, we see, you know, like we are not allowed many places. They say you're gonna, you know, like hurt someone or hurt some community. Even me coming from a country that Islamic rule being imposed, you know, like on us. I cannot. I've seen many places I cannot criticize it because they are afraid, you know, like to hurt so-called Muslim people, which we know, you know, like even in many culture, many countries, even in the West, they have been allowed to, you know, criticize the specific religion and the impact of that religion on women's life. But because of I think the effect of postmodernism and cultural relativism, you know, like it kind of, you know, tidying our hands to do that. Thank you very much, Alicia. We really appreciate your, you know, like beautiful, you know, like topic that you brought to IWG this year. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Homa Arishman. Homa became a well-known leading person to stop Sharia law in Canada. She is a coordinator of the international campaign against Sharia courts in Canada. She is a coordinator of the international campaign for one secular school system. She is also a coordinator of international campaign to close Islamic embassy, Iranian Islamic embassy in Canada. She's a founder of a charity in Ontario called Cultural Bridges Association. She's in 2006 received annual Toronto Humanist of the Year award, and Homa also recognized as a Woman of the Year by Gazette des Femmes for the year 2005. Homa Jan, welcome. Homa, floor is for you.
Homa, can you hear us? Homa, can you please unmute yourself? You can unmute yourself, Homa. We cannot hear you.
Sometimes, you know, when you unmute and when you mute everybody, when the person wanna unmute themselves, they cannot. Maybe Yassi, could you
I just wanted to let you know that Homa's mic is not even connected. So Homa is not really, she cannot even hear us. So maybe we should go to the next speaker, and then you should contact Homa too, because she's not hearing us.
Okay, I'm gonna invite our next speaker, Fiona.
And Tammy, sorry for interrupting you, Tammy. You should speak up a little bit louder. Your voice is very low.
Can you hear me now? Am I good now?
Yeah, but don't shuffle papers or anything like that, because that makes a big noise. Just your voice, and speak up.
Sure. Okay, I would like to invite next speaker, Fiona Beck. She is a lawyer who dedicated many years of her participation helping refugees. Fiona, please welcome.
Okay. I don't know. I can't hear you guys at all.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Fiona, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm not.
No, you're.
I can't hear you guys at all.
So, Homa,
when I talk, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Homa. You cannot hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I did. I'm so sorry. So, okay. Our problem actually for international women. Can you hear me when I talk?
We can hear you.
I couldn't hear even one word.
Okay.
But I can guess because I read the article. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
I can't hear you guys.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I moved my room. There is nothing wrong with my Wi-Fi. I can't hear you clearly, but can you hear me? If you can hear me,
Yes,
I can talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, yes, we can hear you. You go ahead and talk.
Okay, good. I can leave actually this one on and I can go ahead and talk. Okay, the problem we are facing in Canada and whole Western country is cultural. The culture has somehow become more important than individual rights. This is the problem we are facing. And multiculturalism and cultural relativism has given a green right for this matter. So because Canada, because of multiculturalism, and there is a beneficial for that, for government, because of multiculturalism and cultural relativism, the whole country is divided by various communities based on different kinds of ethnicity and religion, different kinds of religion. So as a result, we have more communities than any other countries you can imagine. So cultural relativism actually, to me, is the big barrier for women's rights, and I've seen it. I am a transitional support counselor, and I have been involved in law and reform in Canada, and we managed to reform Arbitration Act 1991, and that's the arbitration to resolve family matters. So they were going to bring Sharia court. When we were fighting for Sharia court, we realized that they do have Jewish court for the past 80 years, 90 years. They do have Catholic court as long as Canada was exist, so as any other countries. So we were fighting to get rid of Sharia court, but we managed to get rid of all faith-based arbitration. What I'm trying to say, multiculturalism and cultural relativism has given group right over individual right. And this group, in their imagination, in their assumption, this group have all homogeneous belief. It means that whatever the leaders of so-called religious activists or religious leaders, whatever they come up with the law and regulation of 7th century, 4th century, 10th century books of God's books or whatever, based on that, they're evaluating the culture of people. So because they come from, let's say, Germany 100 years ago. I'm talking about people who came 100 years ago, Amish ones. They're still speaking the same language, no integration whatsoever happened in this country. They speak the same language they came 100 years ago. Even German people do not speak that language anymore. And they kept the same culture belonged to 100 years ago. And that goes for Indian as well. The Indians came here, I'm talking about from India. They came here probably 4 generations ago. And still they do have forced marriage, arranged marriage. They change it, they send the children back to their home country, especially girls, to get married. And this is, and you know, children in society is not capable of fighting for their rights, because they do have in their policy, that's their cultural rights. This is not individual rights, it's their community rights, it's their parents' rights. So therefore, a girl of 13 years old can be traveled to another country in a nice wording, if I want to mention it, but in reality is child trafficking for the purpose of marriage. And when we complain to children in society, when we take the matter to the court, they would say, well, it was given permission by the parents, as if a state has vanished its responsibility, as if a state has no responsibility towards this child who's been trafficking to parents' home country, not her home country, because her home country is Canada. And to be honest, they would tell us there is nothing we can do for you. You can take this matter to international court. And who has the money to take the matter for international court? The reality is cultural relativism has been or building a China wall, as thick as China wall, around of women in that communities. They cannot integrate, not because they don't want to, because the culture trumps individual rights. Because if she does so, then she would be disowned, not only by her parents and her abuser, but also by the community members. And then we face honor killing. We face child brides. We face executions. Well, they kill themselves. They commit suicide. In my opinion, that was execution done by the community, by the state, because they didn't involve into saving these girls and women and who are going through tough time. I work for abused women. And if I tell you that for the past 21 years experience in one charity who fights for women's rights, I hardly ever see any woman coming from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indian, lots of Iranian, of course, thanks to women's rights activists in Iran and in here, they understand their rights, but not many Afghanian. Only the ones who come to us are the ones that police is involved, they have broken arms and legs, or they had 8 or 10, they've been stabbed 8 or 10 times, and their abuser goes to court. And I do attend court too, because that's my duty as well. And you know, the lawyer comes there and says, that was part of their culture. The reason this woman got 8 times stabbed and lost her eyes and lost part of her body is just because she was not obedient of the culture. She put the culture down. She put her family down. She put her brothers, sisters, husband's family down. And that's why this guy, poor thing, he did not educate. He was not educated in this country. He did not understand the equal rights. So therefore, he went according to what his culture dictated him. So what can we do? I realized that for the past 21 years, being in Canada more than 35 years, I realized that the women's rights movements are actually divided by 3 different kinds of movement. One is the right-wing movement. And right-wing movements are the ones who strongly believe in culture, who strongly believe in religion, who strongly believe in cultural relativism. And to be honest, all the Western governments are promoting this movement, are giving them money, are building the center for them, and they give them room to be the spokesperson. So the reality is what we are getting hit, whether it's in Iran or whether is in Egypt or whether it's in Canada or Sweden or Netherlands, doesn't matter. It's these right-wing activities happening or trend happening within the movement. So they are very active. And the reason they are very active because they get supports from religious, and institutes as well as the government. I can see, I give you one tiny example. Aga Khan is very moderate Muslim whose leader is still alive, living in England and living in mansion. You should see the castle he's living. And he opened a nice, beautiful museums here. So what they see, the museums, what do they see? They don't see that this Aga Khan is promoting, the group rights. And this group is not homogeneous. Some of them are anti-women. Some of them are anti-children. They still hit their children. They still take their children out. They still put the chain on them. And that's the reality. I did have a client, 18 years old. For 2 years, she was chained in basement and nobody was there to help and support her. So they don't see that part. They see that, okay, this cultural relativism is giving right to these communities. What kind of right is that when women and men are not equal? What kind of right is that when working class cannot unite in union because of this certain culture who does not believe in union, who does not believe in equal rights? And if they do come to union and see there are some women there, they withdraw themselves. What kind of culture is that? They put all these women in a firm or factory working in hundreds, thousands, and not having highest standard of living, and not having, even this factory doesn't have air condition, doesn't have a proper standard of workers equipment to work with. So this is happening in Canada, and it happens in England. And as I said, it happens everywhere else. In India, the whole factory gets on fire and lots of women would die and children are with them at the daycare downstairs. In here, we don't face that. It's just because the factory they're renting it from a Canadian, or they have to go by law to rent it. As a result, if they're suffering because not having the clear or perfect air, or not having a condition, or not having higher standard of living, because they pay them only $6 per hour and they force them to go and collect some welfare or so on. When it comes to union, they cannot participate in union. We can't even talk about union. They'll be fired immediately. So this is the situation of women's rights right now, internationally, universally. Then we have liberal ones. The liberal ones, we achieve so much from the liberal activities up to now, but then they have achieved whatever they wanted to achieve. They wanted to achieve the equality between high-ranked women and men. But did they care about the women who've been here for past 100 years and didn't learn one word of English? Did they care about the child who's been trafficked into different countries among themselves to get married? No, they only cared about the high-ranked people, women, to gain equality with another high-ranked man, to be elected in parliament, to be an MP and MPP, to go to become a president. These are all nice. In reality, doesn't touch my right, my sister's right, your right, any rights of any of these women within these communities. Therefore, they have achieved what they wanted to achieve. their achievement is limited because of their existence. If they go for more right, therefore it would be a socialist or a communist country, and then they think they lose their rights. They still need to be on high rank position, and of course for that they have reached to whatever they wish to reach. So therefore we cannot rely on liberalism at all. We can only rely on ourselves, on working class. We are the one who always at the forefront of any progressive campaign. You go to any country, any progressive campaign is led by the socialist activist people, by women who do care about working class people, by women who do care about homelessness, by women who do care about child's rights, by women who do care about these individual rights, and the men who defend these women, and the men who supports these women, and the men who comes and carries the flag for equality. So we need to rely on ourselves. We need to actually be the backbone of this movement, but the left-right movement. I know everybody attacks left. I don't care if you think about left as Russia, but one thing I know, all my co-workers who are at the forefront of any campaign, these are all leftists. I do care any achievement happen in any countries. You study about the lead person of that country, you would realize that they were all belong to left-wing movement. So therefore, I strongly believe that if you believe in equality, if you really want Child Protection Act to be enforced, doesn't matter where you come from, what class you come from, what color of skin you have, what background your parents had, what religion your parent had, please be the activists and support this part of this trend of women's rights activists. The other thing I would like to mention is about the situation in Iran. You know, we are told that this is your country, is Islamic country. You people who living there, that's their job to free themselves. But you know what? Every one of us can be the voice of women who cannot speak in Iran, and they are right now in prison because they came out and they spoke, or they were killed by the government or executed after they've been gang raped. How can we I do have a campaign closed on Iranian embassies. We can cut down diplomatic relationship with Iran. We can force Canadian government, because I live in Canada, I'm saying that, but that's an international campaign to close down Iranian embassies. Why did we say Iranian embassies? Because that is a center of terrorism, is a center of diplomatic tie with Canada, United Nations, and everywhere else. So this center needs to be closed. We should not have any diplomatic relationship with Iran. Their embassy needs to be closed. As far as economic one, well, I don't want any boycott economically, because that hurts people of Iran. That hurts kids, the children. That hurts women the most. So therefore, I am not for economic sanction in Iran, but 100% diplomatic sanction. We want all the leaders of Islamic leaders who really were involved for the past 40 and years, and arresting and killing and mass torturing and mass killing these people. We want all of them to be arrested and put on trial internationally. These are the things that we can put pressure on government. We did it. The funny thing is the right-wing government supported us instead of liberal government. Why? I'm leftish. You should be supporting me, not the right-wing one. Anyway, and they closed down Iranian embassy in Canada. But that's not enough. That's not enough. We need to put pressure internationally to, abandon Iranian regime to even enter to any kind of relationship with any countries. I think we have to treat Iran, the Iranian government, as government of South Africa, the apartheid government. We need to treat them like that. We need to treat the leaders of Islamic regime of Iran exactly like what we did to, you know, the German leaders during Nazism. You know, we need to arrest them. We need to put them in international trial. We need to ask victims to come and defend
Homa,
the ones they lost their victims, you know.
Homa,
So these are,
can you hear
sorry?
me, Homa? You have
Can
to.
you hear me?
I can hear you, but you need to wrap up because we're out of time.
I
We're
can't
out
hear you guys, but I believe you said you can.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You have to wrap up. You can see my sign. Wrap up, please. If you cannot hear me, wrap up. We're out of time. Thank you.
I can't hear you. Give me a call.
Well,
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Maybe
We just have to disconnect her.
maybe
No, I
you know,
can't.
put it in the chat for her.
I'm using my phone perhaps.
We need to ask her to. We need to bring the next speaker because we're running out of time.
So
Okay.
do you
Almost
want me
over.
to end my speech?
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm
Thank
going to
you.
use my phone from now because this doesn't
Okay.
work.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Homa.
Okay, our next speaker is Fiona Beck. Fiona is a lawyer who dedicated many years of her practice helping
Can you
refugees.
hear me?
Fiona, oh,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Floor is for you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I wasn't actually expecting to speak and certainly haven't prepared anything. So I've been working with immigrants and refugees now for over 30 years. And the other side of my practice is a criminal practice, concentrating mainly on working class and poor people that become involved with the criminal justice system. Now, the other thing is that until the pandemic, I really, because I never studied social studies at university, I was a linguist and then I became a lawyer. So I didn't know anything about postmodernism. And then when I had to start learning, because I wasn't following these discourses that were going on in many fields, and I had to start learning about it, I'm just really appalled at the way universities, now I can't speak for Europe because I haven't lived in Europe for many years, but I'm appalled at the fact that universities in North America in particular have adopted postmodernism as the only way forward in academic learning. So I actually started to look around for academics who were against postmodernism to get another point of view. And there's a very interesting Muslim woman that maybe you all know her, called Hirsi Ali, who talks about women in Islamic societies, who talks about the shortcomings in Islamic societies. And believe me, now as a white person, despite my experience with many different cultures, there's no way I would say anything about anybody anymore. So I don't feel anymore, as a result of this postmodern discussion and everything being about identity politics as well as cultural relativism, when you factor all that in, really there isn't anything you can say in a public forum that would bring your experience to bear to improve a situation. So my little place in the world where I do that is either in a tribunal or in a courtroom. Homar, you were talking about domestic violence situations. I personally haven't seen in my practice any domestic violence be excused on the basis of cultural relativism. And that's probably because...
Fiona, your voices get disconnected.
Oh, okay. I don't know how that happened. I didn't do anything that was different. Did you mute me? Okay. So I haven't seen people be excused on the basis of that, but there's always a tendency to try to explain behavior on the basis of cultural relativism. So what I do see all the time, however, is I I meet young women lawyers who have no idea about feminism whatsoever. And I'm appalled to say that they actually announce, well, I'm not a feminist. I mean, I've never heard that in my life, that a woman that I know or who had been educated at a university would come along and say, well, I'm not a feminist, as if feminism is actually something negative. So, but I think that feminism is really competing for space in the postmodern dialogue about culture, about race, about identity, about gender in particular. And so, we're confronting this right now, because I don't know if you're aware that rape relief in Vancouver was defunded by the city of Vancouver because they believe in women-only spaces. And whether you agree with that or not, the fact that the city of Vancouver could take away the funding on which they depended, an organization which is such a long-term organization in Vancouver, and the city of Vancouver, which is very, let's call it trans activist led. But the thing is, they took away their funding, and so rape relief was going to the city of Vancouver this week in an effort to get their funding back. It's about $30,000 a year, and the only reason it was taken away is because that they say that their houses should be women-only spaces. And so this is where postmodernism has taken us, I believe, because I think that you can't be pro one thing without being anti another. Everything is about division. Everything is about individual rights. When you talk about collective rights, it's just another way of saying really individual rights, because you can't say anything about that person because they're from a different culture, which is just nonsense. Not all cultures bring good things. Not all cultures have, no culture has all positive things about it, and no culture has all negative things about it. But it doesn't mean that you can't criticize the negative things about a culture. I mean, including my own. My background is, I'm from Scotland, and so there's plenty of negative things in our culture. There's lots of good things in our culture, just like anybody else's culture. I live with someone from El Salvador. I've worked with Latin Americans for about the last 30 years in particular. There's lots of things I know about that culture, but I wouldn't say them.
Not that great.
I wouldn't say them in the public space anymore. I've also been part of a Chinese family in Vancouver, and I know lots of things about that culture, but it's just, we talk to them. These are discussions we have in the family about people's different opinions about what's going on, but there's no way you can say them in public. And so my problem with postmodernism now is that it has stopped this kind of dialogue about really what's happening with women's rights around the world, because you can't say in public without being deemed some sort of racist or anti that culture. So it's really not an intellectually open discussion that you can have anymore. It's very much an intellectually closed discussion. So I would recommend that you watch the discourses of people like Hirsi Ali. She's also married to another academic whose name I can't remember at the moment. And then there's another woman called Helen Pluckrose, who has a forum on what she calls grievance studies. And she did an experiment recreating papers based on postmodernism in order to see what could be published. And she found that if you were writing only the right sort of discourses about postmodernism, could you be published in any kind of academic sphere? So I believe that the education system, or the university education system, has really let us down as feminists, and that it's just appalling that academics have come to these conclusions, and now we're stuck with them, and lots of people are discussing them without actually understanding them and just getting very emotional about them. So that's really all I read Alicia's article, and I thought, well, this is the first time I've actually seen somebody I know talk about this stuff. So that's why I said I would be part of this discussion, but it's really an ongoing discussion, I would suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. That was very inspiring and eye-opening.
We are so glad to have you in our panel. Okay, our last speaker is Yassi Bayani. Yassi has worked for equal rights for women in Iran and Canada. Yes, Alicia.
Tammy, sorry to interrupt. Yes, Yassi, absolutely. But I was wondering whether we could invite Eva Urrutia. She is a feminist. She lives in Argentina, and we know that Argentinian feminists only recently got the right to abortion in Argentina, in the land of the Pope. I think it's only fitting that Evie should say a few words.
I agree, or I prefer if Evie goes before me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's Evie then talk first and then Yassi. Please, Evie.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really happy to be able to, I'm here in Buenos Aires right now, and yes, it was very emotional when we finally got the right for abortion. I'm living right now with an aunt of mine. She's totally against abortion. So she was driving me nuts all of these months, almost a year, because my point of view, because because I was going to the demonstrations and I was going, I was helping one of the leaders here of the movement, one of the lawyers. But well, it was a long fight, which I actually never saw. I never thought I will see that in Argentina. Coming from a small city in the north of Argentina, very machista, very like. I never thought. I actually thought I will see this kind of movement more in Canada than here. But it wasn't like that, Suddenly, the new generations are like unbelievable strong. We are now facing the femicide things, there is one woman killed every day here by their partner. I have friends who done, they went to the police because they are beaten and there is no measure. I have a family member even with abuse, and we couldn't do anything because the police doesn't act, So yeah, we still have a long work to do here. Now that we got the right of abortion, but I'm seeing, and I can understand because I'm also Canadian. I lived in Vancouver for many years, and yes, I see like the women rights are getting backwards. That we are losing a lot of it. And that we are not doing enough. And one of the things is because of this cultural relativism. I definitely agree with everything that Alicia said there, and that people are afraid of talking about it. And I think we have to start, especially the minorities communities, like the Latin America, for example, start saying that we don't agree with this. That yes, there is some good things in our culture, and there is a lot of bad things in our culture too. And that things we have to fight it, definitely. And I also think that as a Latin American, if I go to another culture to live in, like in this case, Canada, I do have to, change things also because I'm living in another culture. But why would I go and impose my own culture in another one? I don't know if I'm being clear in this, but if you do want to continue with the culture you have, maybe you should stay in your own country. I'm going to say like this, what I think, like I'm going to talk. Because we cannot defend that because of cultural reasons people can kill, or can mistreat children. And that's what is the Canadian government been doing for a long time. Many women were killed because honor killings, and the police didn't do anything because of these cultural reasons, and we cannot do that, we can't. So yeah, I joined this meeting today because I wanted to see what can we do as me as being part of, two cultures in the South and the North, and to see if we can start working together, in something to stop this back right, like in the US, all of these states going back to no abortion when we just got there, it's just so sad to see. So yeah, thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
that.
much. That was great, Devi. And we are glad to have you tonight. And you opened another perspective about the situation of women in South America and especially Argentina, right?
Yeah, as I was saying, it's very difficult because since I have my aunt living here with me and now I'm speaking English, so she doesn't understand what I'm saying. But oh my God, you cannot imagine. Last 2-3 days ago, she was accusing me of killing children, you know, because it was in favor of abortion. No, it's just amazing. But we have to fight that in our own culture. What can we say? It's nonsense in many ways, you know. I get the religion, I get, you know, the point, but you imposing that on people and not, it's just, well, we have a long way.
You know, like the other things I think, you know, cultural relativism or postmodernism has is they just want to respect your culture, but they don't see that how women or people are fighting hard. They don't see that part. They don't see any connection to that fight. There are many people are, you know, like opposing or fighting in their daily life against this, you know, like abusive relationship or changing the law, changing the policy, you know, like standing up. Like it's kind of like covering up all those parts of the women's fight or even the society, or, you know, like fighting progressively to make those changes. All they see is like something, it's been there forever and it's not going to change. But that's not true. You know, we are alive and we, you know, like every society, you know, like they are fighting for better, to making, you know, better world, making changes. And I think, you know, postmodernism doesn't see that part, kind of shadowing, you know, that part. Okay, great. If anybody else, you know, like Alicia or anybody else doesn't have anything, I would like welcome Yassi to come and give her piece. Please, Yassi.
Thank you very much. And I hope you all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
So my voice is audible. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to give you a personal story of when I lived in Iran with my 10-month-old daughter who just had started running at a very early age. And when she was running, the 10-month-old was running in a little short in a working class neighborhood in south of Tehran during the war, and there was a horrible war also going on. This very pious Muslim woman with a lot of power, the Sharia power was behind her, came and told me that, do you know if a man is aroused by looking at your daughter, who's going to go to hell? And I was looking at her with horror, and she answered her own question, telling me that it is you who's going to hell because you're not covering your daughter and she's arousing men. And the horror I was experiencing at that time, and the law was behind this woman. So I was a person, I didn't believe in the hell she was talking, but I totally believed in the hell that she had created for myself, my daughter, and for millions of women in Iran under Sharia laws. So what I'm saying is the reason that we have to fight against this culture or religion or whatever she has is because it is inhuman. It is unfair, and we really need to stand up. And I want to tell you how I feel when the CBC, our publicly funded television, radio, now they have a woman named Janella Massa. And every day I must listen to the promo of this woman who's a high rank. They're paid like probably several $100,000 salary. This woman is with hijab and she is like promoted on a daily basis, and every other hour the promo says, oh, you know what, when I was 9-year-old under hijab, I never thought that I'll be a big anchor of any radio. Now I am. So, you know what's the problem with this? At the age of 9, that woman had to wear hijab, and now it's part of her DNA or whatever it is. And now, as a taxpayer in Canada, we are part of the society that are paying her huge salary promoting Islam. You know, because this is an insult to so many people, because first of all, they're assuming that by showing their hair, they're arousing men. Tough luck, that's not the case. And if any man assaults you for showing your hair, that man has to be controlled, and the society has to control that man. But no, we cannot let our public institutions show the Islamist flags in Canada where we are paying. So I won't be speaking much because I know we're running out of time, but I would like to thank all of you as one of the hosts in this program, and say that how much I listened and I learned from all of you. And thank you so much, Evie, for participating all the way from Argentina.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yossi. And it was great, very good, that you shared your experience with us. And thank you for all the women's activists, because if it wasn't for you, especially you, Homo, and all the other people who fought against Sharia law in Canada, that we would have, different set of, court in Canada, which is barbaric, which is, anti-women. And if we don't, continue this fight against postmodernism or cultural relativism, we would have witnessed, abuse after abuse in different communities. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you, all of you who've been, putting your energy, your thought, for the justice and for, women to have equal rights. Now I think we're gonna have an open mic for the people who have questions from our panelists. Please, in the chat, put number 5 if you wanna, if you have a question. I can give you.
Tammy, sorry, I just wanted to know, do you still want to be live streaming on YouTube, or we could stop that?
I think it should be live streaming, no?
You think we should go? Okay, sure. Yeah. Just let me know when I should stop the live stream on YouTube.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, anybody would like to go first if you have any question? Or Abbas Mohammadi. Okay, Abbas, you go first, and then I think Fiona has her hand. Okay, Abbas, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity and you letting me to express my feelings and ideas. I respect people's right to believe in any nonsense they believe. But I do not accept to respect people's thought, because it could be inhuman, it could be fascistic, like in case of Islamists, is inhuman, it's anti-women, it is terrible. Why should I respect that? I don't. But I would respect people's right to believe in anything they believe. They want to worship some kind of a stone or some kind of gods or whatever. Okay, they have the right. But I don't have to say, yeah, that's fantastic. Well, it's not. It's crazy. If somebody believes that the world was created 6,000 years ago, and God created it in such, sequences in 6 days, well, I say this is nonsense. People have the right to believe. But we have a stone in this earth that are millions of years of age. Okay? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas. Next is Reza. Reza, please take the mic.
Sure. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who spoke. I love hearing from all of you about this subject. I have two questions. One of them is a kind of a meta question. I got curious in your opinion. Why is it that it seems like this time we have a smaller audience? Is it something that we did? Is it something that maybe we didn't promote the event sufficiently? So I'm just wondering what you guys think. It seems like on YouTube also we don't have anybody. And my second question is a question for Alicia. I was wondering, there is something in her essay, this idea of cultural relativism in the courtroom when somebody abuses when a man abuses his spouse. If the defense of, I'm not a lawyer, if the defense of temporary insanity is ever permitted in the court, and if this temporary insanity depends on the conditions and the mindsets and the family upbringing on the specific individual, in that case, why would it? I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. It's a devil's advocate question. Why would it not be okay to apply the culture of this person to that court case in a case of temporary insanity defense, if the temporary insanity defense is ever allowed at all? So these are my two questions, and I'm also wondering why we didn't get an audience as large as last time, in your opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reza. I'm going to explain why, because maybe we weren't as active as we were for the last meeting, but this is just an initial meeting, and we are hoping to have this kind of meeting, more often. But thank you for mentioning that. And Fiona, I know, sorry, I forgot her. She had her hand up before.
I'm sorry. The first one is my more important question, actually. In your opinion, what should we do next time to promote the event to the correct people who would like to attend this subject?
Sure. Okay. Alicia, you go ahead, because the question would directly from you. And then after Alicia, Fiona, please go. And if any of the panelists wanted to answer this question, please put your hand up. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first, in the essay, I give a couple of examples on how the courts have actually considered belonging to another culture a defense. It's culture as defense. It was not temporary insanity. This man, Japanese, I believe, and it was in the United States, beat his wife. He thought that his wife had been unfaithful, and he proceeded to beat her to death with a hammer. And he was taken to court, and the lawyer presented culture as a defense. And the court allowed that defense. The sentence was severely decreased because of this defense when the man was found guilty. It's right there in the essay. So
okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it sounds really horrible. I mean,
yes.
It's horrific.
And I'd like to say just one other thing, since Reza raised the issue of this forum and the advertising. It's been done on a week's notice. It's the first forum. I'm really quite encouraged by the attendance, in fact. And if the Vancouver IWD committee calls further forums and further debates, I think that would be very useful, because we'll be attracting more and more organizations to come to the fore and get this thing questioned properly.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, this
Okay,
is just
sure.
if I could say a quick word. Indeed, the number of participants is beyond my expectation, because it was barely advertised, and we're hoping to get a lot of people viewing the event on YouTube. But please go ahead and share. Please go ahead and share.
Thank you. Next, please, Fiona, you go next, and then Homa, and then after Homa is Tara. Thank you. Fiona, you're next. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. I just wanted to say to Yazzie, that point you made about the CBC and that ad, I had been wondering about that ad myself, and what was it that bothered me so much about that ad, because it's so heavily advertised. And I realized the problem is that it's only one representation of Islamic women that's being sort of foisted on the public, because the CBC these days, and I have to say I've pretty much stopped listening to it altogether, the only issues in the CBC they discuss are around identity politics, which is the other side of cultural relativism. So what I realize now after what you just said is that, yes, of course, the problem with that image is that image is only one aspect of an Islamic woman, and not all Islamic women are the same. So it's sort of perpetuating the same kind of myth. The other thing I just wanted to say in reply to the last comment and to what Alicia said in her paper about that culture as a defense, I have really never seen that in Canada. And if somebody got away with that in the United States, I wouldn't take it as representative of the entire justice system, that it worked one time in one place. And I don't know, Alicia, maybe you know of other examples of that, but I've honestly never seen anything like that in Canada. And I can't imagine that would ever be accepted, because the courts generally here do have now, when I say generally, I mean really very generally. Obviously, it could vary according to particular judges, but the emphasis on zero tolerance for violence against women is pretty strong. And I think somebody would have difficulty in Canada putting across a cultural defense like that. I hope so in any event, but I've never seen it, but I certainly hope so.
Thank you, Fiona. Homa is next, and after Homa, Tara, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I had to use my phone because I didn't know what I was talking about. Anyway, there are a few things that I would like to mention. Just the reality is, yes, at the court, they're trying to do the criminal court to water it down and use culture as excuse. I do attend court almost even now on Zoom, almost 3 days a week. And I know all these honor killing, hitting, abuse, domestic violence, always their lawyer, the first thing they bring up is about their culture. That's their culture. We live in a country that we should really fight, 21st century, we should really fight for integration. That doesn't mean that some part of culture is good or not. You know, the reality is we live in one country, we should be under one law for all. We should have zero tolerance for any kind of abuse, especially domestic violence, especially abuse towards the children. But when we talk about this, I just give you one example that happened 3 years ago. Honor killing. Yes, the father, mother, and son they drove the family of family of 6. They drove to Lake Ontario and they sunk their car and they killed the 3 daughters who were not obedient, as well as the first wife. First of all, I work for United Nations as well, and I work for Canadian Embassy as well. In Canadian Embassy, they told us to encourage the ones who come with 2 wives, 3 wives, or 4 wives, to put the first wife, even United Nations, they ask us to do that, to put the first wife as wife and all other 2 or 3 or 4 of them as dependent, like a child. So that by law of Canada, because you cannot have 2 or 3 wives, they can enter the country. So this family coming from Afghanistan, they had 3 girls. The first wife was not pregnant, never had a child. So he married the second child. He brought the children from Afghanistan here with 2 wives. The first wife was considered the wife. The second one considered the auntie. In fact, they did the first wife auntie and the second one as the mother of the children. And this second wife had 3 daughters and 1 son. So what happened? The 3 of them, first of all, they denied whatever happened. You should have seen the rallies we gathered in front of the court. And the court happened in Kingston, not in here, because they were living in Kingston. But the reality was, as matter of honor killing, this is something that is adopted in a family and in community and is cherished by community, and Canadian government closed its eyes because of cultural relativism. So these children, they complained to the teacher, all of them, the 3 of them individually, and they said that they are abused by their father and mother and their brother. The Children Aid Society got involved, but they did nothing. I have an interview that one of our friends, they interviewed me, and CBC and BBC and everyone else. But the second time, the daughter, the oldest daughter, went directly to police and said to police that I am abused, and showed the marks on her body. That last night, my father hit me. Today, they think that I'm going back to high school, but I came to police station. Police went to their house. I know that for the fact because I talked to the daughter before all these things happened and she got killed. So police went to their house, talked to the father and said to the father, here is Canada. Do not abuse your children and your wife. And that's it. If it was Canadian white woman, if she was from a parent who were Canadian white, the father would be arrested immediately, put restraining order in place. Within a year, within 500 meters, he could not contact them. They would put them in PAR program, which is a group counseling for abusers. And the mother would be put for counseling to learn about her rights and also to teach them how to parent. And we do parenting as well. But none of this happened. A week later of that incident, and nothing happened. A week later of this incident, the father decided to take them to Niagara Falls. So he rented 2 cars. The first car was the driver was the auntie, the son, and the 3 girls were sitting there. And the next car was his car, and the mother's car, and the mother's car. That's it. They drove to Lake Ontario. They sunk the Lake Ontario. It is on www.nosharia.com, all interviews there. And then what happened? All 3 of them, plus the aunt, which was the first wife of the guy, they all died. So we all attended the court. What happened? First of all, it was cherished by the community. Amount of money was collected. It was unbelievable. This guy came out of prison like a hero. And of course, he can marry 4 or 5 of those members of community who the youngest girls of the community. But the lawyer attended this court in defending the mother the father and the son who committed 4 people's crimes, killed them, said that is because it was part of their culture. Their culture put down the mother, the culture put down the father, the culture put down the community, and they were dressing up like Westerners, they were putting makeups like Westerners, and we could not accept that. The 3 of them went to prison. 2 years later, the mother came out, and 3 years later, the son came out. The father still is in prison because they think they're all being influenced by the father. The amount of money they receive is unbelievable. After he came out of the prison, because we're following him and the mother, he bought the biggest house in Toronto and he married immediately. Tell me, if it was Canadian, if it was integration, a murderer would be treated as a murderer, would not be cherished as a hero. But this is what multiculturalism is doing. And this is what cultural relativism is doing. For the part of From, I strongly believe that if you cannot run it once a month, at least run it once every 3 months. I'm hoping that with the movement is happening and the right-wing activists coming forward, not only for the women's rights organization, but also within the unions, I'm hoping that by next year, we can challenge it at the court system and get rid of this cultural relativism. Multiculturalism is part of our system. We were told that we need to hire lots of money. The first campaign we need to run, and I'm going to talk about it, is to have one secular education for all children. Right now, we have Catholic school, we have Jewish school, we have Islamic school. We managed to push back Islamic school. All of these are funded by the government. And when you talk about this, reporter at CBC, you know, the aim is not to have only a Muslim woman figure at CBC. It's their advertising. It's their, I would say they're trying to state one statement. And that statement is Islam can be moderated. Islam can never become moderated. The reason Christianity has become moderated is because a big, huge hunt happened during 100 years ago in France. None of this would ever happen. They want to say Islam can be moderated, women in Islam can become speakers and whatsoever, but this is not the reality we're facing. Islam cannot be moderated. I'm not a Muslim woman because I came from Iran. Tahmina is not a Muslim woman because she came from Islam, a so-called Islamic country. But they're putting our face. The media even mentioned my name as a Muslim woman. How many times I have to come and say, I am godless. I have no God. I don't believe in God. I'm atheist. And so as all other activists. But because we come from so-called Islamic country, they name us as Muslim because they want to emphasize that Islam can be moderated. It cannot
thank you
be
so much. Homa, can you hear me? Thank you so much. And we're almost getting to end of our session.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I saw Evie raising her hand. I'm not sure if Evie, you wanted to talk?
No, it's I just wanted to support what Homa said about, you know, the culture, this thing. I know about the case that she was talking about because I was watching in YouTube all these cases about honor killings in Canada. And literally, I don't think there is no way definitely to say that it was a culture and that it's okay to kill. Because in Canada, it's not okay to kill a woman or to hit a woman. And we have to stand by that. There is no culture right there to do something else. You know, I don't understand how the court in Canada can just, you know, say, yeah, well, it's the culture. I just don't, I think it's unfair. And I think it's definitely, I will even say racist, because if it was somebody from Canada, as Homa said, he will be in prison. How can they just free this guy who helped the father to kill these 4 women? And not only that, the mother was agreeing to that. I mean, it's just sick. You know, that's not fair. That's not justice. It's not justice. And we have to start fighting for justice, real justice in Canada. And that's all I wanted to say. I mean, it's outrageous.
Thank you, Eva. Very good point. Thank you very much. We have Tara, Puya, and Pari on the list. Please try keep it 2 minutes, and we are almost toward the end of our program. I would like to thank Homa. Homa, your explanation was very, very eye-opening and very, very helpful. Thank you. Tara, Puya, and Pari, please, Tara, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Homa. It was excellent. I think I want to answer just Reza. Reza said, like, why not many people here? Because we didn't do any advertising. So it's just 1 week after, like, our International Women's Day, and it's just first from. And I just want to emphasize on Homa. Homa, like, suggested, like, even if we cannot do every month, at least once in 3 months, we should emphasize of this topic, cultural relativism and multiculturalism, and we have to end of this. And I am strongly with that. I'm strongly support that. I just want to say that, and thank you, everyone.
Perhaps even more often than once every 3 months, if we can.
Thank you, Tara. Puya, you are next. Puya, are you in the room? Okay, if not Puya, Pari, you can go next, please.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for initiating this dialogue. What I was thinking is we should actually set a plan for meeting up regularly, but also how we have courses in the university or college level or even high schools, because all these kids are attending all these education systems. So if we could have a program, actually come up with a program and go through the education system, Ministry of Education, and kids can get credits from these courses. And that's how we are going to work on the new generation, because it's nice that we are addressing what the issue is, but now we have to find the solutions and ways that we can overcome the problems we have as an immigrant from different ethnicity. So that's what I think, that we should come up with some kind of plan as to how we are going to address the issue. Thank you so much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you, Pari. If Puya is in the room, please, Puya, go next. If he's not, I would like emphasize on, like the campaign Homa has it in her hand called One Secular School System. I think that's very important, because I did my own research and I found out in like 50 years ago, there was $0 for funding so-called religious school or private schools. But right now they are getting over 70% or 80% funding. And we have all these different, like religious school, such as Islamic school, Sikhism school, like Christianity school. And I think, like these schools are brainwashing kids. And sadly, like I work in elementary school. I remember a few years ago, there was a camp in North Van, and one of the parents came to me, like gladly, that she thought I'm going to be happy that we have Islamic camp now. The Islamic school took the student to the, like one of the camp. And then, like I said, what do you mean? And I read more about it. In that camp, girls were not allowed to swim in the pool, or the girls were not allowed to dance. And I asked her, like, seriously, this is happening in Canada. In the eyes of children was right. Are you okay with this? And she said, oh, you know what? They are practicing their religion. Aren't you happy? You are Muslim. And aren't you happy you're allowed in Canada? You practice your own culture and your own religion. I said, like, No, I'm not. And then I had a discussion with her. And like these things is happening in our eyes. And I think it's very important we all become proactive. And the other suggestion I had was if CBC is giving, like voice to that Muslim woman, how about we don't ask? We should ask about the, like have a secular woman voice. We should ask for funding. Us as a secular woman, we should have a voice. We should have a TV program. Like we should go follow and, find this out. Yes, Alicia, you go next. And I think
I would suggest quickly that the Vancouver IWD committee can send a letter to CBC telling them exactly that. First of all, that we think that to parade the hijab is like parading a symbol of oppression, and it's in very bad taste. Second, she cannot be held to be representative of all women from Iran.
not just Iran, it's like people.
Yeah.
Hijab been